Good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here today. So just to introduce myself quickly, my name's Naomi. I run our measurement team here at LiveRamp, and we've been really focused on measurement solutions for CPG brands for over 5 years now. So we're here today to talk about some of the learnings we've had from setting up our sales lift studies for CPG and how those can maybe be applied to retail media. And then we've also got a great case study from the team at TikTok, something we've worked on together for the last year, all around creative efficiency. So this is what we'll be covering today. More broadly than just retail media, if you're a CPG brand, you're probably measuring your campaign effectiveness in one of three ways. The first, that top-level modeling approach where you have your total media investment across all your different channels, your total sales across all different channels, and trying to use those touch points to model the impact of your media and give macro-level budget recommendations for how you should be investing. If you're lucky, you might be doing some in-platform conversion reporting. So we're starting to see more of this now as retailers open up their data for retail media, but actually passing transaction data into platform, allowing for in-flight optimization. But this one has always been trickier. And then the last piece of the puzzle being the sales lift studies, where you're able to do incrementality at a campaign level, setting up a control group to use as a baseline to understand what's the natural purchase behavior for your brand, and then seeing anything above and beyond that is incremental due to the media. Now, we believe there's not one measurement solution that's better than another. My belief when it comes to measurement is more is more. Try and do as many of these as you can and triangulate results between them. So if we think about how the three of these can work together, starting at the top, doing your market mix modeling or econometrics, feeding in those top-level budgets that you have, deciding for the quarter how you're going to optimize your spend. Then you've got the in-flight stuff happening with the conversion reporting. And then lastly, sales lift, looking back at that particular piece of media and figuring out what was incremental due to your spend. I'm going to take out in-platform conversion reporting just for now, just because for CPG, this has been trickier up until now, not having access to the data. But even having these two other layers of measurement available, how we recommend our CPG brand partners to use this is take that top-level measurement, decide what your budget is going to be across social, out of home, in-store, TV for the quarter. And then once you know, okay, we're going to invest that 100K on social, make sure you have some sort of incrementality measurement to see, are you using that 100K to the best possible way? So how do you optimize that slice of your budget and get the best possible return on that? There's two main ways to do sales lift. So the first one you'll see a lot in market is those geo-based sales lift measurements. These are great because essentially you're able to hold out certain areas of the country and look from receiving any media and then look at how they perform versus where they are receiving media. These are really flexible to set up and give you a lot of opportunity to do cross-channel measurement. And then the other piece of the puzzle is that people-based measurement where you're getting access to exposure data and you can deep dive into platform metrics such as frequency, creative, all of the things that are happening on that particular channel. And some are even doing a combination of the two, so setting those holdouts up at a geo level and then overlaying that platform exposure data to see what is going on. How does LiveRamp play with this? So if you've heard of LiveRamp before, you probably know us more from either the identity space or the data collaboration space, and our measurement solution ties both of those offerings together to enable us to tie together exposure and conversion data in a deterministic customer way. So we work with partners like TikTok to receive their exposure data on a device ID, which we can translate to a ramp ID. We take conversion data on a loyalty card, for example, like with our partnership with dunnhumby, convert that club card to a ramp ID, and we can tie together then, okay, this person may have seen an ad on Saturday, and then they went into the store and bought that product on Wednesday. So it's enabled us to act as an unbiased and independent third party for measurement for some of the largest social media brands in market. So our three key takeaways. We say push for incrementality, incremental return on ad spend, not just conversion-based return on ad spend. This is mainly because when we run our incrementality studies, we see on average only a 2 or 3% lift above baseline spend on some of these media channels. So when you're relying on return on ad spend, it means maybe you're overinflating the effect of your media by up to 10 times more than what is actually incremental due to that piece of media. Secondly, by having customer level data, you can really look into past to purchase. So without knowing the individual who bought it, you don't know if they were new to your brand, you don't know if they were existing customers, you don't know if they're coming back and making that repeat purchase. So this is where something with retail media is going to really unlock access to tying together who that individual is and how that media is driving that. And also being able to then tie this back to exposure data allows you to think about flighting. So how much time does a customer typically take between seeing an ad and actually physically going into the store to shop, and that helps you optimize your media. And then lastly, having access to platform level exposure data lets you do optimization of what's actually happened on that channel. So no matter how good your audience strategy is, if you're not serving the media in the right way at the end, you might not be getting, again, the best return on what you're trying to do. So we look at things like optimum frequency on channels to drive sales, the best creative strategy, and the best ad formats. And so this is a perfect place to hand over to Ross to take you through all the stuff we've been doing with TikTok on how to drive creative on their channel.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. I'm Ross, work at a small startup called TikTok. We've come on leaps and bounds in the past few years and just kind of look at kind of the magic of measurement and how that's kind of developed as a platform. Just some top level highlights from that perspective. We've measured a total of 2 billion impressions over 2022 and 2023, resulting in some top-level highlights here. So with an average iROAS of 91 pence, which is the LiveRamp benchmark is actually 26 pence. So really, really strong results there. And just kind of cutting through kind of those top-level results, 2% in sales lift, 4% in customer lift, and that incremental spend as well. So you can see it's quite from a big level of sales of studies of 61. With that in mind, we want to kind of go through kind of why those campaigns were successful and go through some of those top performers. Firstly, you'll see an example on the right-hand side here in kind of what we always talk about at TikTok is native first. Make your creative appear like what it is on the platform. So it should be a seamless interaction, utilizing these recognizable creators and kind of linking that organic side through to that paid side as well is a super way of being able to be effective on the platform. And also as well, just down the bottom here is 82% of campaigns that performed above the LiveRamp benchmark utilize these native creatives. Moving through onto the tell them, the what, and the why. I think sometimes in creative we can always tell people the what, but not necessarily focus on the why. You see a great example here from Ben & Jerry's on the right-hand side and kind of featuring product in the first 2 to 6 seconds and ensuring you're kind of capitalizing on the USP in that sense and being able to drive users through to purchase. Once again, 74% of the campaigns that performed above the LiveRamp benchmark had elements of product benefits. And then, once again, finally, is media alignment with best practices. So aligning your buying processes with your campaign processes as well. So we saw that campaigns that ran from a 9 to 12-week period saw greater efficiencies from a media perspective. And then it also, again, finally, as well, with this cumulative frequency aspect. Those who've worked with me beforehand, probably none of you in this room, but Naomi definitely has, is that I bang on about cumulative frequency quite a lot of the time. But finally, kind of back up by that data point of 66% of campaigns that performed above the LiveRamp benchmark were above 60 days. And then these are the things to consider when utilizing measurement from that perspective on TikTok. So I've kind of touched on these already, but product benefits drive purchase, aligning campaign length with purchase cycle. But there's a few other things as well that we always want to touch on as well as external factors. So what are your competitors doing at that point in time within the market, promotional activity of other retailers, and also I put in stock levels at Tesco because this is utilizing dunnhumby data. So it's just another small aspect that you need to kind of take into account when kind of going through that aspect. I'll flick back to Naomi, who's going to introduce our speakers.
Thanks everyone for listening to that. We're now going to invite Nat from dunnhumby and Caitlin, who's one of my colleagues from LiveRamp, up to have a panel session on measurement.
I'm Caitlin. I lead retail at LiveRamp, and we're also joined here by Natalie Collins from dunnhumby to talk about the magic of measurement. What are the key factors that you should be thinking about when it comes to measuring performance? What is business as usual versus innovation? And what do we have to look forward to in the future? Just to get started, as I know we talked about in the last session, there are a number of metrics that advertisers should and can, choose to focus on for their campaigns. What do brands in particular need to think about when choosing the KPIs for measurement? And how fast and how should they think about adapting a test and learn strategy? Maybe start with Naomi.
Yeah, good question. So I say it very much depends on the size of the brand, because for CPG in particular, if you're a brand that's already dominating the category, actually driving sales lift and return on ad spend in the short term is going to be very tricky. So for brands that are bigger, we normally recommend focusing on metrics like share of aisle or bringing in new customers to the brand. And then even if you only drive, say, a small percentage lift, every percent is much bigger. Whereas if you're a new challenger brand in the category, you might be looking for those larger sales lists because you have a lot more headroom to grow. And then in terms of designing a measurement strategy, I think a really common thing we see for brands when they finally have access to that retail data is they design a campaign and they want to test everything. They want to test the audiences, they want to test, and each audience is going to have a different creative and a different buy strategy and a different mix of channels. We get the measurement back and we're like, yes, it works, but we're not actually sure why. So it's like looking at what campaigns are coming up over the year and pick one key thing to test across all of those really helps simplify what will be better for the long term of the brand.
I was just going to add into kind of Naomi's point here is actually when we're thinking about kind of setting KPIs, we need to understand what business problem or solution we're trying to achieve here. So if we're running an upper funnel campaign, if we're setting lower funnel KPIs, the measurement is going to come back flat. And you need to have an understanding of kind of what you're trying to test and being able to do that. And if you try test things at all sort of different levels, as kind of Naomi it's mentioned, is it kind of comes out muddled and you can't actually drill down into that aspect. So it's important to just identify what you're trying to do and then execute that. And then also to add in from kind of that, the kind of the test and learn perspective is that we need to kind of understand exactly how, what you're trying to achieve and then achieve it in achievable chunks rather than trying to take off too much of a massive chew in that sense.
Some great insights. And as some as you guys know, and as you talked about before, LiveRamp really powers the bridge here between offline and online measurement from like creating a holistic path to purchase. So for example, I saw an ad on TikTok on Wednesday and then I went into Tesco and purchased it on Saturday. Do we see this and consider this as innovation, or is this now business as usual? What would you say, Natalie?
I think, so I know Naomi touched on it as well. At dunnhumby, we've been doing that closed loop measurement for quite a long time. But I think it's only now really becoming prevalent in the industry because the number of retail media networks, the number of platforms that are there, that really means that it can be underpinned within that media plan. I think going back to something that I think it was Michael from Kroger mentioned around actually getting insights into the hands of not just brand teams now, not just the retail teams, but the agencies as well, means that they want to be able to see that insight planning that they've done and then bringing that right through to activation and then measurement. So I think it is starting to become more BAU and an expectation. I think the innovation is going to continue around, there's obviously the loss of the cookies, new kind of data clean rooms coming in, and how that can be used with connecting up first-party data, retail data, how we continue to build on kind of some of the partnerships we've got, but what LiveRamp have been doing in terms of bridging that gap as well will bring that continued innovation in sort of the industry.
I mostly agree with what Nat says. I think the thing that will be interesting from an innovation perspective is obviously a lot of the social channels have had their measurement capabilities sort of up and running for quite a long time now. It will be interesting to see how these more on-site or in-store media touch points open up data and enable brands to run measurement in a similar way, that we can get a sort of consistent story across the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a good point. And thinking about innovation in measurement really means that we're really unpacking these insights from a retail media perspective and the value from retail media. But where do you guys see innovation and the next innovation from there?
So I think there's probably going to be two areas. Well, no, there'll be lots more areas, and I can probably cover some more, and you guys will have your own ideas. But I think having things easily accessible, so self-serve, how can people go in and see things in a consistent format? So that's not just in terms of being able to access themselves, but it kind of goes back to a lot of what's been said by the IAB and ISBA in terms of standardization of metrics, I think is going to be really key. And then building on that is obviously the automation behind it that underpins it, just to make it easy, because it is a complex landscape and there are different providers, so making it as easy as possible to be key.
And I think on top of that, previously very few retailers have been open to sharing their data in this sort of individual way to do things like measurement. And I think what's really great to see as retail media becomes more forefront, I think a lot of retail is thinking more about how do we make this data accessible for brands to actually understand customer journey and the sales impact that's happening in store.
I was just going to add to that point actually around innovation, is that whilst innovation is great and it's something that should always be at the forefront, I think that we should always keep things like privacy in mind, and it's something that is always a real challenge when going through innovation, because with the likes of things like GDPR, et cetera, that kind of put pressures on not only retailers yourselves, but also platforms from our side of things, and being able to link back and utilizing stuff like the RAMP ID, for example, is a great piece of innovation to be able to showcase. I think more of that, of being able to measure in a privacy-centric way, looking after both our consumers, users of a platform, is going to be a really, really important thing when it comes to innovation kind of going forwards.
Yeah, and sometimes innovation is not always seen externally. It's those protections on the internal side. They're not necessarily pushing for change, but really changing the way you execute from an innovation perspective. I have another question actually for you, Ross. I mean, we all know social media is a really great way to reach your customer and reach new customers, but obviously recently it's been really plagued with more real metrics over the years. So what would you say that brands need to think about when it comes to a measurement perspective when they're in the creation process?
Yeah, it's a really good one. I mean, at TikTok, we're really, really big on creative, and kind of that is where you're going to see success. And starting all of your measurement conversations, all your planning conversations right up front, and being able to focus everything into your creative is really, really important. And as well as, I mean, talking from a TikTok perspective, but also you'll be advertising across a number of different other platforms, and that you should be creating content for that platform. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation here, and I think that sometimes if you do try to utilize content across a number of different platforms, you can tend to see kind of middling out results in that sense as well. And I think also to add to that point is that with that side of things in mind, is that pushing yourselves internally, pushing our teams to be able to kind of do better for users, for customers in that sense, and make it an engaging piece of entertainment rather than actually just focusing on kind of, right, what is easiest for us and what's kind of best for us, what is actually going to be effective for us in that sense as well. So from that kind of that side of things, from a creative perspective, is doing that really, really early on and having measurement as a real key part of your planning tools rather than kind of bolting on measurement towards the end in that sense as well.
Makes sense. I think we have time for a couple more questions. In terms of retail media, obviously within the CPG and grocery space, we know that's quite prominent and quite advanced from an innovation perspective, but what is one top tip you would look to give other sectors, fashion, footwear, accessories, other type of retailers and brands that are really starting or embarking on that journey? As I know in other geographies, especially the US, they're already starting to, but in the UK is quite new. Natalie?
So I'm actually going to go for two. One more for like the retail space, and then one more for brands, because
Bonus
I think
points.
it's slightly different. I think within the retail space, it's around start of the offset with having a simple framework. It's really easy to get wrapped up in the complexities, and obviously there's so many different areas within retail media that you can play, but actually think about what plays to the strengths in the beginning, and that might be with sort of your on-site, very much within the store. So depending on kind of what type of area it is will be there. And I mean, coming from kind of dunnhumby, we're going to say absolutely underpin everything with data-driven insights through to kind of that planning, activation, and that measurement is going to be key. And then I think for brands, bring your teams together. So if you're looking to sort of start and test with a campaign, get your shopper teams, get your brand teams, get your trade teams, align on kind of that single KPI that you're going to be tracking as success, and get out there and test, but don't try and do every single one thing in one test, because, yeah, as Naomi and Ross have kind of alluded to, then it's really hard to understand kind of what's working, what's successful there.
And my answer might be slightly biased, but I always think like having that data available for measurement as the first point can be really helpful, because you might find that when you're taking this retail media offering to market, if the brands that you work with have never had sales-based measurement before, they might find it really tricky to interpret the results. And most of the brands you work with will be doing other types of media outside of that. So if you can help them measure sort of their broader marketing strategy and understanding what does a typical campaign look like for them in terms of success, the types of customers that respond well to it, it then actually really helps drive what the best retail media strategy is for them. So it can almost be really mutually beneficial to lead with measurement, and we see that in other markets, and we're starting to see that with other industries as well. So for TikTok, for example, we also work with entertainment. So we're able to match cinema ticket data back to TikTok ads as well. For the studios that serve films, this is like the first time they've ever had access to ticket sales data. So I think CPG, we're quite lucky because we're further along the line with measurement knowledge and like what sort of KPIs to accept, but maybe in like in more fashion retail where they're not used to having these kind of metrics, just setting a sort of baseline KPIs and what success usually looks like could be really helpful.
I think that's important, not just chasing the monetization, but how are you going to measure it? How are you going to prove it? What's the value you're going to add to those brands and those partners? What are you hoping to see more of in retail media in the future?
I think it comes back to part of what I'm really passionate about is actually there's loads that you can do within kind of the core retail media estate, but you can also use that rich data, sort of broaden that. So obviously we work with LiveRamp and TikTok in terms of enabling them to understand the power of the platform and how brands are doing with their upper funnel campaigns. So I think being able to open up quite kind of siloed platforms and networks to be able to really look at that cross-channel measurement will be really exciting, and I think that's where we can extend throughout that funnel, which a lot of people have been talking about today.
I think much further down the line, it would be really interesting to see how different types of retailers work together. So I know someone touched on it earlier, like the difference between someone shopping a brand in convenience versus a large store. I think probably quite some way until retailers are happy to let their data be joined together for one use case. But with the rise of tech that allows this collaboration with data, I think that's something that could tangibly be on the horizon and could make for a really interesting story for brands so they can track their customers across all different places they're interacting with the brand.
We do have time for one more question. I'll pick up back on that. And we didn't ask this ahead, so I'm going to put you on the spot. With some of the challenges, the tech challenges, the privacy regulations that are coming up, obviously the death of cookie deprecation, with those challenges in mind, what are you most excited about in terms of this new kind of period in 2024 in terms of measurement? What excites you about some of the challenges ahead that you'll face, obviously, from that perspective?
I think from a newer platform perspective, we're being able to build from the ground up, which is sort of we're building kind of more privacy-centric first measurement in that perspective, rather than trying to fix or change what is kind of being utilized in the past. So I think that's really, really exciting, and kind of seeing these larger groups with such like audience verification or these sort of areas where the industry is coming together and kind of standardized. I think it was touched on earlier, is kind of more industry standardized perspectives rather than kind of siloed platform-based measurement. I think is really, really exciting, and being able to see kind of a level playing field for everyone to play on, essentially.
And again, I think someone touched on it earlier. We'll probably see quite a shift in where budgets are being spent across maybe moving away from some cookie-based environments in the short term into some of these new exciting channels coming up. So I think this is where measurement's going to be really key, is making sure that these new budget mixes are essentially paying off for the brands as they want to see it.
So I think, obviously, with all the talk around identity and how do we connect people across all the different environments, I think, a lot of what we do is around making the experience better for the customer. It doesn't matter where that customer is, whether it's a kind of a Tesco customer or a customer of utilising a platform. And I think actually the kind of the shake-up that is going to happen will enable us to connect up more and reach those customers at all those different touch points and just make the overall experience much better. And I know I am looking forward to very much not having to constantly click, OK, I'm fine with cookies every time I go on something, because actually, I'd just much rather my experience is better than, being so concerned about that.
Yeah, the amount of things I have to click on to actually get to a product page. Yeah. I'm going to throw one more question out there, completely unrelated to measurement. Obviously, Tesco and other favorite brands aside, or brands that have been on stage, who's your favorite brand to follow on TikTok? Or socials, if you're not on TikTok?
Mine's Marmite.
Ooh.
Yeah, Marmite.
That's really a love or hate situation.
They're doing some really fun stuff at the moment on there. I definitely recommend for you to check them out. They've done really well. That would be mine.
Are you a pro Marmite? Are you a Marmite?
Oh no, I hate it.
Yeah, same. I can't.
Love the brand though, but I don't really like it.
Well, that says how good their TikToks must be. Naomi, are you on TikTok? You don't have to answer, but
show my age. For me, I think it's definitely innocent. I don't know if anyone else follows them, but they bring behind the scenes at the office quite a lot onto their social pages, and it's always quite entertaining. So yeah.
I've already said to Ross, I'm not on TikTok.
It's okay.
He said, it is fine. It's okay. But then, as you pointed out, I do see TikTok all the time on Instagram, so kind of, yeah. Bye. I think one of my favourite brands, because I really like what they've set out to do, is Tony's Chocolonely. Not just because I absolutely
Love
chocolate as
Tony's.
well, but I really like how they've used up until now, because now they're going into kind of paid-for media. But they've used social, their brand, and their kind of getting out there to do good to drive everything. And yeah, I think it's really interesting.
What's your favorite Tony's flavor?
I do like a lot of them. I'm trying not to eat them at the moment because they're so good. But the sea salt and caramel or the pretzel one has got to be winning. And last year I did have an advent calendar, so I got to kind of, I don't know. But this year I'll not be doing that.
Your advent calendar is great. So thank you guys so much for joining and providing your insights today.